Today I don't feel like doing anything. I just wanna lay in my bed. Don't feel like picking up my phone, so leave a message at the tone. 'Cause today I swear I'm not doing anything.
Gentle loving hugs, and thanks for turning in to the Fibro Friends radio show here on healthinforadio.com, part of the Entertainment Global Media Network, broadcasting out of heavenly Clearwater, Florida. If you feel like doing nothing at all today, then just sit back or lie down. We're here to educate you with a full spectrum of information on fibro, advocate on the behalf of all fibro friends for fibro awareness and the need for more research, and support each other with laughter and love. New to fibro? Wonder what it is? Fibromyalgia is a complex chronic disorder involving a malfunction in how the brain processes pain, which leads to other multiple dysfunctions in the body. Some of the main symptoms of fibro are pain and fatigue, sleep disorder, memory and concentration, depression, digestive disorders, hypersensitivity. So today, you've tuned into Fibro Friends. So please welcome your host, Laura Rosa.
Hi, I am Laura Rosa, your host tonight with Fibro Friends. And tonight we are going to be speaking to a very special lady who suffers with fibromyalgia, and her name is Sharon. And Sharon's going to be appearing via phone. Are you on the line, Sharon?
I'm here. Hi,
Hey.
Laura. Hi, everybody.
It's great to have you here.
Thank you.
So I understand that you are new to Florida, that you just recently moved here.
Yep. Haven't been out here too long. Just trying to get to know the area.
Well, she lives here in the Tampa Bay area in Florida on the sunny beaches of St. Petersburg.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And you are also a new member to our fibromyalgia support group that we hold here in Tampa as well.
Yes, I am.
And that's
which
how
I'm very grateful for. It was wonderful to find a support group.
Well, thank you. We enjoyed meeting you, and I found you and your story to be very touching, and I think that sharing this with our listening audience may be very inspirational for them as well. So I'm really grateful that you're taking time out to be on the show with us tonight.
Thank you.
So if you don't mind me asking, your fibromyalgia came much differently than what most people would say how they acquired fibromyalgia. Most people usually can pinpoint a time where there was an emotional or physical crisis, but yours went a little bit deeper. Go ahead and tell me a little bit about what happened, if you don't mind.
Well, I'll try to capsulize 3 years worth of things as short of a version as I possibly can. I am a nurse, or I was a nurse for over 20 years, and healthy as a horse, never took any medication, worked 10, 12-hour days, never really had any issues regarding my health whatsoever until about maybe February of 2009. And I started feeling just a huge shift in my health. Malaise, just my stamina was gone. I was having a lot of chest pain. I was exhausted. I just, everything about me was shifting. And I knew there was something really significant happening with my health.
Right.
And I had a pretty strong history with heart disease in my family. My father had died at 53, and I was 50 at the time.
Wow.
My mother has heart disease. My sisters do. I mean, it's just kind of like every red flag you could have for heart disease, I had it. And so, again, to make a long story short, I went to my primary care physician, who was a very well-known, well-respected physician in Virginia, which is where I am from.
Okay.
And he pretty much, ran me through all the typical labs and put me through the EKG, the stress test, which, of course, I was not able to complete at all. and pretty much said there's nothing wrong with you, but because you're also having pain in your stomach, here's some Nexium. Okay. And basically call me in the morning.
Okay.
So I tried to understand, all right, well, let's just give this a try, even though I knew in my heart my vital signs, were off the charts, my blood pressure and my heart rate. Again, make a long story short, I went back to him about 3-4 times because none of these symptoms were getting better. They were getting much, much worse. I was insisting.
Interrupt you because I'm not really asked you this before. What test should or could he have run to diagnose you? Right now, nobody's really heard the answer to this, but listening to the story
regarding cardiac.
What would have been?
Because
yes.
I'm pretty much a pro now.
I bet you are.
Cardiac.
Right.
He ran all of what would be the typical, what we call the standard of care test.
Correct.
Your EKG, typically they'll even throw an echo in there, and your stress tests will be kind of your standard procedures, as well as some lab work, some blood work. But there, especially when you have a patient, and especially a woman whose symptomology is incredibly different than a man's.
Correct.
It is extremely important you take it to the next level. And there truly is only one absolutely definitive way to know if there is a blockage or a clot in your heart, and that is through a catheterization.
Okay, and that
even though that is a little more of an invasive procedure, it certainly is, in a situation like mine or any other woman with the kind of symptoms I was exhibiting, and certainly a family history, and I also smoked, it was absolutely warranted. Unfortunately, even as a nurse, I did not know that.
At the time.
I knew that he was basically following the standards of care, but what I was going by was what my body was telling me.
And you were...
And my body was telling me I was sick. I was really sick, and I didn't have long. I had the intuitive knowing that something was shifting significantly inside of me.
And he wasn't.
I even went to the ER, and they basically ran all the
same typical
same things, and the response was pretty much the same as his. And unfortunately, I'm sure if there's any nurses out there listening, they've all heard the same thing I've heard. You're a nurse, you know too much, there's nothing wrong with you, so basically go home and deal with it.
Right, you're
not
going to...
That was in February, and it was early April when I had a massive heart attack and actually did die. Saved me, obviously.
Obviously, somebody did a good job to get you back.
Open heart.
Yeah, and that's not the way they like to do open heart, is through emergency surgery.
No, I literally did die. They brought me back, and I had literally minutes for them to get me open.
Oh, my gosh.
So it was a very emergent thing, and to kind of speed up, because this is about fibromyalgia, and but the cardiac history is kind of the catalyst or the thing that exacerbated, I think, all these other things that were brewing.
Absolutely.
And I think that's something very important for people to know.
Yes.
That from everything that I've learned and studied and experienced, from Virginia to Florida, and all the research I've done in between with doctors and just specialists from A to Z, this usually occurs when there has been something catastrophic or some major, major stressor happening in your life. Right. It's pretty much as if it's lying dormant in your body, and it just takes something to just blow it apart, and it just starts to be something that's now full-blown coming out.
And now you're discussing the fibromyalgia.
Right.
That was your trigger.
I also have lupus, but
which a lot of people do who have fibro.
If you have lupus and you have, say, cardiac, which I do, and I have GI things, you can have those issues, and you can be almost guaranteed, I don't want to say guaranteed, but you are so much more likely to end up with fibromyalgia. Yep. Most people don't start, or I should say statistically, you don't start with fibromyalgia and get something else. It's the other way around. So if you have lupus, you started with the lupus.
Right.
And fibromyalgia came into it. And that's basically what happened with me. I, especially being a nurse, I knew I was not recovering as a cardiac patient.
Because there was something else going on. Right. You were, as a nurse, you had been treating cardiac patients. You knew what the recovery time would look like and how they responded.
And, I'd gone to cardiac rehab, and, even people that I worked with were taking care of me. And they're saying, you're just not coming back. You're not bouncing back at all. And I was becoming more and more debilitated. The pain was getting worse and worse. And, of course, I started the next cycle of going to all the doctors, from the thoracic surgeon to all the cardiologists. Gastrointestinal issues started, so I started seeing gastro people. And initially it was, it's your nerves, it's your stress. I had started with panic attacks and migraines, and it was, I'm a woman, and I've just had too much stress on me. So again, it was very much kind of being pushed under the rug again, that I knew something else was happening to my body.
You weren't done.
And that there was more going on than they were saying was happening to me. And they started to make me feel like I was going a little crazy.
Yes, I've heard that from several people who are so persistent and insistent on knowing that they know they're not being heard. And
right. Well, something I learned, I remember a medical director when I was a very young nurse, one of the first things she ever taught me that I worked with, she said, Sharon, don't look at your tests, your machines, at the numbers. Look at your patient. Because
that's so wise.
The tests and the machines and all that stuff doesn't mean a thing unless you really look at your patient, because you're going to know what's happening. And I felt like nobody was looking at me.
Yep.
They weren't seeing the huge changes that were coming. I wasn't sleeping. I was wasting away. I had dark circles under my eyes. I had lost so much strength. I couldn't lift anything. I couldn't walk. I couldn't climb stairs. The migraines, the panic attacks, everything was just getting worse and worse and worse. And, when I was still, full-blown early on cardiac, there was a lot of concern, and, people were very attentive to make sure nothing was happening with my heart.
How was that mending when you had the bypass surgery, which is very traumatic on a body? How was your heart mending and healing appropriately?
Well,
in spite of
that was kind of a side thing that they kept telling me that I actually was mending, and that all the tests were showing that my heart was in truth getting better.
Okay.
My ejection fraction was coming up, until I switched to I want to say it was my third or fourth cardiologist, and they finally ran some more tests and did another catheterization.
Okay.
What they didn't know, the doctors prior to that, is my complaints were incredibly valid. Probably within weeks of my open heart, 2 of the 4 grafts had failed.
Oh,
so
wow.
I already was pretty close to death again, and they kept saying there was nothing wrong with me.
Now, people who don't understand medicine at the level, when you had 2 out of 4 grafts, and
I had 4 bypass grafts done.
So that's so each
2
valve.
of the main ones. One of them, which is what they call the widowmaker, which is the critical one, the LAD. Right. That one already had given out. And
nobody
another
was
one had
checking.
already given out, and I was down to 2.
And they don't know this unless they do a catheterization.
Well, every test they did, kind of like prior to the heart attack, said I was fine,
right,
and that I was doing great.
But you're down to 2 valves. Until they actually
did a catheterization, they got in there and went, "Oh, we got a serious problem." So they had to put 5 stents in to try to hold the little grafts that I do still have left. So in truth, I lost a whole year and lost a lot of time for my longevity because of tests saying I'm fine, and in fact I was not fine.
And if you weren't a nurse or being an assertive person, you probably would have died probably after the 2 failed grafts, because
Without
it
a
would
doubt.
eventually
I
the
probably would
rest
have
of it.
died before I even made it to the hospital the first time. Because again, this isn't really the format to talk about
But
cardiac symptoms for women.
it is
But
important
I
because
never
we
had
need to be aware of what that is.
true cardiac symptoms. Men will have chest pain, they'll have
Right.
jaw pain, they'll have left arm pain.
And women
I
will
had
have
nothing but symptoms of flu. I thought I'd been around patients all week that had flu. I thought I had the flu. And if I didn't realize and was able to take my own vitals, I probably would have just stayed home, at which time I would have died.
Wow.
So
if you don't mind,
that's another.
Well, really, seriously though, for the audience, can you go over the symptoms that women need to be aware of that we do not fit the same profile as men? Because
they
don't.
can be so varied, and
but I don't
the more I worked with women after my heart attack, I became much more involved with cardiac patients, and especially women, and being an advocate for women.
I can appreciate that.
I have had women talk about symptoms, everything from a strange ache in an elbow to just a little bit of a low backache, leg pain, their shoulder pain where they just thought maybe they strained and, maybe they'd been reading a book to their child or
wow, they're very vague.
Been in the garden too long and just had some aches and pains. Nausea is a big one.
Okay.
Diarrhea is another one.
Okay.
So unfortunately, they're so vague.
They are vague.
Be ignored and passed off to something so completely innocuous that it's very, very difficult to really recognize in a woman what is, truly that symptom.
So
but
I can see a lot of...
comes in
okay.
and complains of any unusual symptoms, that she just kind of... One thing we do have, though, as a woman, is we have an intuitive knowing. There's something wrong with me. That, especially if there's a family history, if she's a smoker, if she's overweight, if she's got any other health problems, history of hypertension, diabetes, any of those types of things.
That's a stressor.
That's when a doctor's really got to see red flags go up and go that extra step.
And do the
and not just assume that, well, she's not saying she's having any chest pain and her EKG looks fine to me, so let's send her home. At the very least, that person should be kept in an ER and at least have the enzymes run for 24 hours to make sure that there really isn't an imminent or an occurring heart attack, which absolutely can be happening.
Right.
So
well, thank you.
I
think that is. Thank you. I think that's really good information to share for any human being that has a wife or a woman, that may have a history of heart disease. Even though, yes, this is a fibromyalgia show, but you're right. Fibromyalgia is the outcome of a bigger event that takes a life of its own. Yet I do think how important this story is for you to share with everyone, that who would know, oh, I have the flu. Gee, I'm moments away from a heart attack.
And it's happening younger and younger and younger. Just when I was in cardiac rehab, there were people in there. I was so intimidated to go because I figured I was going to be in a group of, all 85-year-olds.
Right.
And there were people as young as late 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s.
Wow.
I mean, it really, you especially a woman, really has to pay attention to their intuitive knowing. And when something's just not right, And especially if they do get any really classic signs like indigestion, chest pain, arm pain, jaw pain, strange headaches, because you also have to think if you've got a blockage in your heart,
right,
you've got blockages other places too. You could have blockages in your carotid, you could have them in your leg, you can have them in your aorta. I mean, that's where stomach pain can be coming from. It really is something where you've got to get in to see a good internist. Somebody
a good internist is where you would send them then to start. Yeah. Okay, that's good. Some people just don't know, well, gee, do I get my PCP to write a script to see a cardiologist with our HMOs, but an internist can be a PCP.
Again, it depends. Our healthcare system right now, that's a whole nother topic too. There's a lot of things changing, and with HMOs and all the different things that, are currently in the news and
it's scary.
Being election year, and we don't know exactly what's going to be happening, and doctors, are leaving the field.
Yes.
There's a lot of problems ahead, and that is part of the reason that for fibro, for cardiac, for diabetes, for all of the different, cancer, anything, you have to be your own advocate. You
Absolutely.
have to trust that what you're feeling is real. And you cannot assume that just because someone has MD after their name, that they are this brilliant person that has all the answers. No. Because they're not.
They're human.
They're human. They make mistakes. And in today's world, they're hurried, and they assume a lot of things.
Too badly, they do.
You have to fight for yourself.
Yes, you do.
You really, really do.
And if you don't feel you've got the courage to do it, you bring somebody with you that will.
Yes.
And say, this
whether
is
it's
not
a family
right.
member,
Right.
There's plenty of groups out there, different advocate groups that will go with you and give you the support you need to ask the right questions.
Yes.
So that's real critical.
Well, thank you for covering that part of it. So,
sure.
Okay, we can move forward now. I really appreciate you giving us a little history there, because that is something that also is affecting just a huge number of our population today, and we can only count on ourselves. And we also need to remember the doctor works for us.
Exactly.
Do not be intimidated.
And bottom line, what I should have done, fire them.
Yes, and say next.
I mean, it's the truth. We go to them and we are putting our lives in their hands. If they aren't treating you appropriately, if they're not answering your questions, if they're not taking time to listen, if they're making you feel like it's in your head, or you've got, emotional issues, especially if you're a woman.
Right.
Well, and I shouldn't even just say that, because men also are treated like, come on, man up.
That's
what
true.
are you complaining about?
What, 20% of men are not diagnosed yet.
Go to somebody else.
Right.
Because the truth is, you have hired him to be in charge of your life.
Correct.
And if you don't think that person's doing a good job, boy, move on.
There are plenty other guys out there that can. Don't be afraid.
And you might have to go to 10, 20 of them.
Do it.
But your life's worth it.
It is worth it.
It really is.
Yes. Yes. That's it. You make a very good explanation there on how to handle our health care and keep good notes and records, especially if you have fibromyalgia, because we forget easily. Okay, so you're in a place back there where you're gotten your health stabilized, and you said, I know there's one thing in this world I want to do before I die. I want to live in Florida. Yep. So you packed up your things, what little left you had after selling everything, and your babies, which are four-legged babies, all three of them.
I have 3 rescue dogs, very large rescue dogs.
Yes, I'm not sure who rescued whom there in that case. You 4 make quite a team. I got to meet them last night. And you came to Florida and settled in here. And you mentioned to me that there's just one big piece missing. And you want to talk about that? What did you not have here that you didn't really factor in?
Well, what I wasn't prepared for is that I had walked away from all of my support system.
And that is so
and that
crucial.
I wanted to, not knowing how much time I have left, I wanted to try to at least have some quality of life and live out at least one more of my dreams.
Yay for you.
Unfortunately, what I didn't count on was that I was going to move to many states away from everyone that I had as a support system and be alone. And that's where finding a support group was kind of like the first step and the connection that I desperately needed to make.
Yes.
Because fibromyalgia is so painful on so many different levels.
Yes.
It isn't just about physical pain or emotional pain, but it is horribly isolating.
Yes.
And to begin, even if you have a husband, a wife, a family, brothers, sisters, children, and tons of friends, if they don't have fibromyalgia, you already still feel alone. Yes. And then to be in a situation where you actually really are alone.
When it's real.
It's double isolation.
Right.
And that really exacerbates your stress,
yep.
which I'm sure anybody that has this knows that that's one of the worst things that can be happening, because it just makes everything else going on with you physically so much worse.
It does.
And that when you have a good support system and you're around people that, they might not necessarily even have to have the same thing,
right.
but if they finally really kind of get it, they understand that just because you have an invisible disability, people can look at me and they can see the scars on my chest and they know, oh, she had open heart.
If
and,
you're in your bathing
isn't
suit.
That sad.
But on the street,
nobody else
I would never know you were ill.
They don't see the horrible scars that fibromyalgia has caused inside.
It does
and
taint
what it
every
does
part
to
of
you
us.
mentally and emotionally and physically. So I think that having a support system is incredibly important. And even, shows like this talk radio program is so important for those that, let's face it, a lot of us don't get out of the house. We
right.
spend an awful lot of our time in bed or on the sofa. And
the most comfortable
to leave
place in the house
is a huge thing. And to be able to have an avenue, whether it's through the computer or the phone or the television, radio, to hear about other people that feel the way you do is extremely important.
It
and
normalizes it for you.
To make a big difference.
Yes.
When you're feeling like you're just standing by yourself.
And you've been there since you moved here. And what month did you move to Florida?
Actually, I'm coming up on a year.
I had no idea you'd been here that long. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't even realize it myself.
Wow.
When you're in a position where you don't get out a lot and you're not able to socialize, and you tend to lose track of the days and the weeks and the months, and I didn't even realize that I'd actually been here almost a year now.
It does go by so quickly. All these deadlines we have to meet, the world still expects us to keep up with paying taxes and renewing licenses and, all this red tape that life involves just to be registered and functioning at a minimal level that we do. Everybody's at their own special place with this. We have what I call the functioning fibros, who are still able to hold some sort of a job or career, and then those who can't. They just don't have it in them to do a full-time job, and their life turns into a life working around medical providers, because we have so many different issues going on, and we have so many different specialists that we need to see, and that's very draining, in a day.
And then there's the group that were functioning, which
right.
I had been for a short period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And when I basically was told I'm no longer safe to practice as a nurse.
Ouch.
For me or my patients. I'm no longer safe, period, to do really anything. So then you lose your career, you lose
That was your identity from what I can see, the little
you do.
I know
exactly.
That was who you were.
Know, I think man and woman were so, and for me, nursing was not just a job or a career. It really was my vocation.
It was your passion.
That in itself is devastating. And then you start that unbelievable road that so many people are struggling with, going down for SSDI.
Yep.
And to get help, and it's so overwhelming. And whether you're functioning fairly well or you're not functioning at all, it's horrible. It's a horribly difficult, complicated, and really set up in many ways to almost make you fail.
Yes, it is. It is. The private disabilities that we get, and we think we're so safe with all these benefits from our employers until it comes time to utilize them, and they're nothing like what we expected them to be.
Not at all.
Devastating, and people
they
expect
you to jump through so many hoops,
and you can hardly get out of bed.
Exactly, and especially with something like fibromyalgia that affects so many aspects, not just physically, but the fibro fog and the confusion and that cognitive difficulty. You practically need a college education to complete all these different forms and all the things that you must do in order to get help and benefits and proper medical care.
And then they'll say, look how well you did this application. If you're well enough to do this, then you're well enough to hold a job. How about that? I mean, it's crazy, the things I've heard.
Yeah, it is.
You can't do it too well. Or, and then you feel like they're forcing you to play the game.
And that's really what it comes down to. And the silly thing is you're begging for your own money.
Yeah.
You're begging for what you worked all those years to pay into, and you're begging just to get that help.
And it's only a portion of the pay that you had been living on. And you have no insurance unless you can afford the COBRA. And once, you become, quote, labeled disabled, you have that 2-year waiting period before you can even access your medical care.
Exactly. And that's painful. Where, blessedly, I'm getting close. My COBRA ran out in July, and that was definitely a help because my meds run around $800 a month.
Jeez.
And my SSDI is definitely not able to handle that in living.
Right.
And, so right now I'm paying cash for the meds that I'm pretty much forgetting all the other things that are wrong with me and just buying the meds that are for my heart to keep me alive.
And but going December without 1st,
I'll
the
finally
other
be
ones.
able to it'll be 2 years and I'll be able to get Medicare.
Which is December 1st.
But there's people that are just at the beginning of that road.
Yeah.
Or people that they've been denied SSDI. I was one of the lucky people that got it right away because of my heart.
Right.
But with fibromyalgia, it is like so many of the other diseases, whether it's autoimmune or it's inflammatory, from Gulf War syndrome to lupus, and fibro and everything in between. There's so many people that are struggling just to get these people to believe that what they have is real, that it exists. And so they're denied sometimes 2 and 3 times.
Yes. And they have to wait a year to get a hearing.
What are they supposed to do?
Where are they supposed to get their money to eat and pay for their housing?
Exactly, and have a roof over their head.
If you have children, it does make it much easier because you can get in through the Medicaid and through that avenue. But if you don't have children and you're just a young adult, there is very limited resources out there.
Exactly.
There are some private groups that I'm finding are out there really trying to create a safety net for people in that situation. but there needs to be more awareness in that area so that we can have and increase that population to help support these poor souls who are having to wait for some decision maker in their private disability or their, Social Security swamped with their hearings.
I think that it's just in the baby stages, but I do think that information is finally starting to be a little more in the news, a little more in the papers, online about the Disability Act, and getting people to become more aware, whether it's people like us or the vets or children. I mean, there's so many people that so desperately need help, and it's just criminal that when you're already going through something so catastrophic that you're being put in a position to literally fight for your life and fight to get help so that you can fight for your life.
Yes.
That's
why we have support groups, thank goodness, to lean on each other. And there's always somebody who has been through something similar who can maybe lend advice or a hand and say, I went through that and this is what I learned. And if I had to do it over again, I would have done this, that, and the other.
Definitely.
And we have to stick together. Yes. Advocacy and education. That's my big two things that I feel very compelled to really take a stand for with what energy I have. And it's not like I'm, a functioning fibro. I pick one thing a day I can do. And on Mondays, I have my show, and I put nothing else on that day. And our support group meetings are twice a month, and that's the only thing I do that day. If I have a doctor's appointment, that's the only thing I do that day. Just getting up and getting dressed and driving and getting out and being in the public, and maybe I'll stop off at the grocery store, but by then I'm wiped out. And I just want to go home and crawl in my bed. And I would say if somebody was to ask me where's the best place to put your money, I would say in your mattress, where you spend most of your time. And I was blessed with a Tempur-Pedic bed as a Christmas gift before I had fibro, actually. And it's just the only place I feel totally comfortable where my body's not in pain. And so if you, those out there, it's definitely worth, even if you can buy a used one, even just the pillows are amazing. So that's my tip of the day.
And I have a tip.
What's your tip?
I have a hammock. I love my hammock.
It's beautiful. It's a big one.
That is the only thing I can actually lay in. Now, it's not a great deal of fun getting in the thing.
I remember how that would be.
And getting out isn't fun either. But once you get in it, you don't even want to get out. It takes away you virtually have no area that is having a pressure point.
Yes.
And it's just like you're in this little cocoon that just holds you when you're in so much pain. So if you can't get a Tempur-Pedic bed, maybe you can get a hammock somewhere.
Yeah, just put some nice heavy blankets on it, because I think the ropes kind of would get a little old after a while. I don't know.
That's true. True.
And maybe that would be a much cheaper way to go if you wanted a bed. Okay, I like that. That's called economic sleeping. Our new point of the term of the day. So I remember when you and I first chatted, and all this has taken place just in the past 2 weeks, how much you and I had in common. And I just felt like I found my soul sister here. You used to be into scuba diving, and that was one time my passion.
I'm a master scuba diver.
Yes.
Actually, I was working on my dive master with Nowie.
Yep.
I'm also a rescue diver, and it was my second love to nursing.
I know.
No
I
doubt
can appreciate
about that.
It's a world all into itself.
Unfortunately, I won't be able to do that anymore, but that was another one of my amazing passions. That was just,
if we could just swim down, put the tanks on underwater, just a 30-foot dive.
I thought about that.
And just sit there, because you're weightless.
Just put your BC on and just have everything in the water and slip it on, and
I think it
just
could be
that
done.
buoyancy in the water, and the wonderful, just the sound of nothing but your bubbles.
That is the serenity that I love, the beauty and the
wonderful. I don't know if there's any scuba divers out there. Good, if there are, they know what we're talking about.
Yeah, and I say,
it's a whole different world.
If you've got fibro and you scuba dive, call us, because maybe we'll have to create some sort of a disabled scuba diving trip.
A fibro scuba group.
That's something to put on the list. I say never put a box around you that you can't climb out of or expand. And I could see that being doable, so don't write that one off your list forever yet. You never know. I mean, that'd be really cool. I used to think I can't wait till my kids get older, because I know how much they would love scuba diving like I did. And my brother also, who's a master scuba diver. And once they got older, somebody gave me a time check. I got sick, and I was really disappointed we haven't done that yet. But, they're telling me like we're already out of time, which I feel like we're just warming up.
Oh, doing fast, doing really
fast. It does. So here you are, single woman. What one good piece of advice would you give to somebody who's listening, who's in your position, living alone, trying to make your way through life best you can with the little resources you have? What's one thing you could say?
The greatest thing I could offer, it's really applicable for everyone, but certainly for women or men that are alone with any disability.
Right. Okay, that's fair.
Get yourself involved with some group, some support group, anything, just anything you can go to, even if it's only once a month, and drag yourself to it. Because I'll tell you, I had to drag myself. Because, even after I got myself psyched up to go, I felt horrible and I was sick, and I was like, oh, I don't want to do it. It makes such a difference. Being alone with your pain and your problems and your own thoughts, and nothing to give you hope and to make you laugh and smile, is the worst thing you could be doing. And by getting out there and meeting people, and more importantly, maybe even helping other people, it gives you back your self-worth. And
that's the final stage, they say. Acceptance and then giving back.
It makes such a difference. I feel like I've got value again.
You do. And you got a lot of friends you just made the past couple of weeks. But I'm going to have to stop the show here.
I've met some amazing people.
They are awesome.
And I know that it's hard to take that first step. It certainly was for me. But please don't get discouraged. Keep fighting. You fought already through so much. Take that one more step and just get involved in a group and talk to somebody. And if you don't think you want to be in a group, then, try to find some kind of a one-on-one or a 2 or 3 people type situation. But anything.
Make it work, right.
And you can call even our group, and even if you don't necessarily have fibromyalgia, but you have a similar condition.
FibroFriendsTalkRadio.com is our website. We're also on Facebook. We got to shut it down here. Sharon, thank you so very much for your time tonight.
You're welcome. It was wonderful talking to you. Thank you.
You've been such a help, and I look forward to seeing you again shortly.
Okay.
Take care. Have a good night.
Everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
That's it, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week, 7 o'clock on Monday. Have a good night.
Remember, fibromyalgia can strike any person at any age. If you feel that you may be suffering from fibromyalgia, please contact your medical provider as soon as possible for proper diagnosis and a treatment plan that works for you. We are not a replacement for professional medical advice, but we are your fibro friends for advocacy and education and support. We encourage you to share via email, Facebook, or Twitter through a link from any of our shows that can be found on our website at fibrofriendsradioshow.com and on Facebook at Fibro Friends Radio Show, with your doctors, support system of friends and family, and your fellow fibro friends. Remember, laughter is still the best medicine, so share the fibro funny today and keep a smile on your face and in your heart. So pass this Fibro Friends smiling, gentle hug full of love to someone in pain today, because it's always the love that heals.
I got